Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive.
It's great to be back.
Ready to get right to it.
Yeah, let's jump in.
This time, we're exploring personal finance and entrepreneurship through the lens of Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Always a classic.
We've got excerpts from the book itself, and we're also going to be comparing his ideas with a real-world example, a newspaper story about a couple who retired in their late 50s.
Interesting. So we'll see how things play out in real life.
Exactly. I mean, one of the first things that jumped out at me was Kiyosaki retiring at 47.
Oh, wow. That's a dream for a lot of people, right?
It is. And that's why I think contrasting it with this couple retiring in their late 50s will be super interesting.
Makes you wonder, what are the key differences?
Totally. And I feel like Kiyosaki's concept of leverage plays a huge role in that.
Leverage.
Yeah, he talks about using other people's time, money, and skills to build your own wealth.
So it's not about just working harder, but working smarter.
Exactly. It's almost like the difference between trying to catch fish with your bare hands
Haha, I can see where this is going.
versus using a net.
Much more efficient.
Right. And he doesn't just stop at that kind of metaphorical leverage either.
Yeah.
He also talks about financial leverage, like using other people's money to buy assets.
Interesting. So instead of saving up for years to buy something, you're using borrowed money.
Yeah, and if you do it right, the asset you buy actually ends up paying for itself over time.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Let's say you buy an apartment building using a bank loan.
Okay.
The rent from the tenants pays off the loan, and then eventually it becomes a stream of income for you.
That makes sense, but it sounds risky too, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
But Kiyosaki's all about calculated risks,
Yeah.
and I think a great example of that is how he bought a beachfront property even before he was wealthy.
Really?
Yeah, he kind of just had this vision and went for it, and I think that really highlights the power of mindset.
I see. So he believed he would eventually make enough money to afford it.
Yeah, so it's not just about the strategies, it's about having the right mindset to spot those opportunities.
So it's all about thinking big.
In a way, yeah, and that mindset can also open your eyes to opportunities within the tax system, which is another thing Kiyosaki really dives into.
Oh, you mean those tax advantages for business owners?
Exactly. I remember him saying that business owners can deduct expenses before paying taxes, unlike employees who pay taxes on their entire income first.
So if an employee earns $50,000, they pay taxes on that whole amount, and then whatever is left they can use for expenses.
Yeah. But a business owner can deduct their business expenses first, and then they're only taxed on the remaining profit.
Oh, I see. So there's a big difference there.
It's like they're playing the game on a whole different level.
That makes sense.
And it's not like you need to be some big-time CEO to start taking advantage of those benefits.
Right. I think he even encourages people to build a business in their free time, doesn't he?
Yeah. He mentions that even Hewlett-Packard and Ford Motor Companies started out as little side hustles in garages.
Wow. That's pretty inspiring. So even working a 9 to 5, you could be building something on the side.
Absolutely. And one thing Kiyosaki emphasizes is the importance of building a business that can eventually generate what he calls passive income.
Passive income, what's that? Is that like money you make in your sleep?
Pretty much. It's
Huh.
all about creating systems that generate income with very little effort.
Sounds nice. How do you even do that, though?
Well, Kiyosaki talks about different types of income, right?
Yeah.
He explains that there's earned income, which is what most people are familiar with, like your salary or wages.
Okay, that's your everyday paycheck. Got it.
Then there's portfolio income, which is what you get from investments like stocks and bonds.
I see. So that's more about letting your money work for you.
And finally, you've got passive income, which is the real game changer. It's about building or investing in things that generate income without you constantly trading your time for money.
Give me some examples. I'm intrigued.
Sure, think about things like owning rental properties. Once you've got tenants in place, those rent checks become a source of passive income.
Okay, so it's about owning something that generates money for you. Makes sense.
Exactly. You could also create and sell online courses, write an ebook that keeps selling royalties, or build a blog that generates ad revenue.
Wow, there are so many possibilities.
It really opens up a whole new way of thinking about making money. But, Kiyosaki also acknowledges that a lot of people get stuck in what he calls the rat race.
The rat race? What's that?
He uses it to describe that traditional path we're all kind of told to follow.
Go to school, get a job, climb the ladder.
Yep, buy a house, accumulate debt, spend your life working to pay it all off. He says it's like running on a treadmill, working hard, but not really getting ahead financially.
I think a lot of people can relate to that feeling.
And that's why he talks about the fast track as an alternative. It's about using financial knowledge and leverage to build wealth and achieve financial freedom.
It's like choosing to play a different game altogether.
And to play that game effectively, Kiyosaki stresses the importance of understanding basic financial terms and concepts.
He's big on financial literacy, right?
Yeah, huge. He says you need to understand the language of money, things like your debt-to-income ratio or the difference between an asset and a liability.
Okay, but honestly, those terms can sound a little intimidating sometimes.
He gets it. He knows it can seem complicated, but he argues that once you understand these fundamental concepts, it empowers you to make smarter decisions about your money.
I guess that's true, but how do you even get started?
He uses a really interesting approach, actually. He connects these financial principles to classic fairy tales.
Fairy tales. That sounds unexpected.
I know, right? But it's brilliant. He draws parallels between the tortoise and the hare and the importance of persistence in investing.
So slow and steady wins the race, even in the world of money.
Exactly. He also uses the three little pigs to illustrate the importance of building a strong financial foundation.
Okay, now that's an analogy I can get behind. A house of straw is not going to cut it.
Exactly. And it's not just about reading these stories for fun, it's about using them to internalize those financial lessons on a deeper level.
I see. He's trying to make these concepts more memorable.
Exactly. He's tapping into that storytelling part of our brains. But he also knows that sometimes you need more than just information. You need actual guidance.
That's where having a good accountant or financial advisor comes in, right?
Exactly. He stresses the importance of having a strong financial team. It's like having a pit crew for your financial journey
I like that analogy. They can help you make the right moves.
and avoid those costly mistakes. And on top of that, Kiyosaki also highlights the power of networking.
Networking for finances.
It's all about building relationships with like-minded people who share your financial goals
Like a support system.
and a source of potential opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
He even mentions Metcalfe's law, which basically says that the value of a network increases exponentially the more people join it.
The more the merrier, right?
In a way, yeah. But Kiyosaki's ultimate message is that true wealth doesn't just come from earning a lot of money.
What does it come from then?
It's about owning assets, things that put money in your pocket.
I see. So it's not about just having a high salary. It's about what you do with that money.
And that's where investing in financial education comes in.
He's a big advocate for that, right?
Huge. He wants you to be constantly learning and expanding your financial knowledge, whether it's through books, seminars, or mentors.
Keep learning, keep growing.
Exactly. And he emphasizes that achieving financial freedom isn't just about what you know, it's about how you think.
So it's all about your mindset.
It's about being open to new ideas, challenging your assumptions, and constantly upgrading your financial worldview.
So you need to be flexible and adaptable.
Absolutely. And I think one of the more advanced concepts he touches on is the role of options in investing.
Options. Like stock options.
Yeah. He explains that sophisticated investors use options to manage risk and potentially increase their returns. But he also acknowledges that many average investors aren't even aware of these tools.
It's like a whole secret level of investing.
In a way, yeah. So it all comes down to education and constantly pushing yourself to explore new possibilities.
That's inspiring. So what does all of this mean for our listener? What should they take away from all of this?
Well, we've covered a lot in this deep dive into Rich Dad, Poor Dad. We've talked about mindset, leverage, passive income, financial literacy, the importance of mentors and networking. It's a lot to absorb.
It is. But here's the real question for our listener. What resonated most with you? What challenged your current beliefs about money?
Were there any ideas that made you want to explore further? That's where the real magic happens, when you take these ideas and start applying them to your own life.
Absolutely. So what are you going to do with this newfound knowledge? Maybe you're thinking about different ways to generate passive income, or maybe you're ready to really understand those financial ratios we were talking about.
Or even start building that strong financial foundation.
Exactly. And, speaking of a strong foundation, one thing that really stood out to me from Rich Dad, Poor Dad was Kiyosaki's emphasis on understanding the difference between assets and liabilities.
Yeah, he's all about building a financial house that can weather any storm.
He wants you to know what's genuinely putting money in your pocket and what's taking it out.
Which sounds simple enough, right?
It does.
Yeah.
But it's surprising how many people struggle with that concept.
Yeah, it's so easy to get caught up in the I want it now mentality, you know?
Buying that fancy car or that big house without realizing they might actually be holding you back financially.
It's like those liabilities end up owning you instead of the other way around.
Right. Kiyosaki's all about shifting your focus from those outward appearances to real wealth building. And, it's interesting.
What's that?
He even questions the idea of homeownership being an asset.
Oh, yeah. That's a hot take, especially since we're always told that owning a home is like the American dream.
It is a bit controversial, but it goes to show how Kiyosaki wants you to think critically about those financial choices.
Don't just accept things at face value. And don't be afraid to challenge the status quo.
Absolutely. And, that brings us to another key point he makes about the value of having a mentor.
Or even a financial advisor.
It's like having a guide in this crazy world of money.
Someone who can help you navigate those tricky paths and avoid those common pitfalls.
He talks about how his own rich dad mentored him and helped him see things from a whole new perspective.
It's like a shortcut to wisdom, right?
Exactly. And he even recommends checking out resources like those Nightingale Conant audio programs to learn from people who have already achieved success.
So you're basically getting advice from the best of the best.
You're learning from their wins and their losses.
It's like having a personal board of advisors right in your earbuds.
Okay, so we've got mentors, we're questioning assumptions, but one final takeaway I wanted to highlight was Kiyosaki's focus on not just working hard, but working smart.
It's about using your time efficiently and making your money work for you.
Building those systems that generate income even when you're not actively working.
It's almost like building your own money-making machine.
And thinking like an entrepreneur, even if you have a regular job.
It's about spotting those opportunities and finding ways to be financially independent.
So it's not just about reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad and saying, oh, that's interesting.
It's about taking action.
Even if it's just small steps at first.
It's about taking control of your financial future.
So if you had to choose just one takeaway for our listener to remember from this entire deep dive into Rich Dad, Poor Dad, what would it be?
That's a tough one. There's so much good stuff in there. But I think if there's one key message, it's that you have the power to shape your own financial destiny.
Don't just sit back and hope for the best.
You have to educate yourself, challenge your assumptions, and make a plan.
A plan that aligns with your goals and your values.
And that brings us to a fun little surprise we have for our listeners.
Oh, yeah. We actually reached out to Robert Kiyosaki's team.
To see if he might be available for a quick chat.
And you won't believe this.
What happened?
He said yes.
No way. Are you serious?
I'm totally serious. We've got a short interview lined up with Robert Kiyosaki himself.
This is incredible. Our listeners are going to be so excited.
So stay tuned, folks. Things are about to get really interesting.
All right. I have to come clean. We don't actually have Robert Kiyosaki on the line.
Yeah, that was a little joke on our part.
I know you really had me going there for a second.
We got a little carried away with the excitement, but even we don't have that kind of pull.
Oh, man. I was kind of looking forward to picking his brain about a few things.
Maybe someday, but for now, let's wrap up our deep dive into Rich Dad, Poor Dad with one final thought for our listeners to consider. We've talked a lot about building wealth, but Kiyosaki also talks about something else that's really important.
Oh, my God.
He talks about the importance of understanding your own personal why.
Okay, so why does your why matter so much when it comes to money?
It's like your fuel, it keeps you going when things get tough because it's easy to be all gung-ho about making money when everything's going great.
But what about those inevitable setbacks?
What happens when you hit a roadblock or the market takes a nosedive or you just feel completely burned out?
That's when your why becomes your anchor.
It's that deeper purpose that keeps you motivated.
So it's not just about the money itself, it's about the bigger picture.
Exactly. Your why might be about providing for your family or traveling the world or pursuing a passion project.
Or even making a difference in your community.
Whatever it is, that deeper motivation will give you the strength and the resilience to stay focused on your goals.
To make this a little more real for our listener, can you share your own financial corner? What keeps you motivated to keep learning and exploring and sharing this knowledge with others?
That's a good question. For me, I think it's about empowerment. I really love seeing those light bulb moments when someone grasps a concept and they realize, hey, I can do this.
You're like a financial cheerleader.
In a way, yeah. I want people to feel empowered to take control of their financial lives.
That's awesome. For me, it's about breaking down those mental barriers. I used to be so intimidated by personal finance.
Really?
Yeah, I thought it was this super complicated thing that only experts could
But
understand.
then you discovered it's not that scary.
It's not. Once I started learning the basics, it all clicked. And I realized it's not about being a math whiz. It's about making informed decisions.
It's about taking control.
And that's a feeling I want everyone to experience.
That's great. So to our listeners out there, we ask you, what's your financial why?
What's that driving force behind your financial goals?
Take some time to really think about it. Write it down. Visualize it.
Because that why will not only guide your decisions, but it'll give you the strength to achieve those goals.
It's your compass.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Rich Dad, Poor Dad. We've covered a lot of ground, but remember, this is just the beginning.
It's a starting point for your own financial journey.
So keep learning, keep exploring, and keep those whys burning bright.
We'll catch you next time on The Deep Dive.